Welcome to Financial Minds Meet the Experts. I'm Jaime Agostino, your host. On this show, we're joined by financial industry experts to talk about topics, trends, and themes that credit union professionals need to know about. In honor of Cybersecurity Month, the Financial Minds Meet the Experts podcast is dedicating the next 3 weeks of episodes to focus on this year's topics of enable multi-factor authentication and strong passwords, recognize and report phishing, update your software. So today we're going to talk about enable multi-factor authentication and strong passwords. We are joined by Mike Bechtel and Keeley Hartman, Vizo Financial's information security analysts. Mike, you're no stranger to the podcast. You've joined us several times, so thank you again for joining me.
Absolutely.
But before we get started, Keeley, this is your first time on the podcast. Would you mind?
Yes, it is.
Would you mind telling our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So, like Jaime said, I'm a part of the information security team here at Vizo. I just graduated college, which is really crazy. And yeah, I don't know. That's a little bit about me. Just graduated and straight into the work life.
All right. Well, welcome. So
Thank you.
first, Keeley, let's get me started here. What is multi-factor authentication?
All right. So, according to NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards and Technology, the official definition of multi-factor authentication, it is the means to confirm the identity of a user, process, or device, such as passwords or tokens. Multi-factor authentication is similar to probably what most people are used to hearing, which is two-factor authentication. So multi-factor authentication can still function like two-factor authentication, but it does have an additional layer of security added to authenticate users by enabling something that a person actually is, something like a fingerprint or a Face ID.
Now, what's the actual purpose of multi-factor authentication?
So the purpose for using multi-factor authentication is to simply reduce the risk of security breaches and to help keep sensitive information and data safe. So the world of cybersecurity and cyber criminals is only going to continuously grow like crazy. With any type of growth comes some kind of risk. And in the cybersecurity world, that risk is usually somebody else using your information to gain access to virtually anything. And when I say virtually anything, I literally mean virtually anything. So it could quite literally be anything virtual of yours. But speaking specifically to the workplace, multi-factor authentication has almost made it impossible for you to access any company data without going through the process of authenticating yourself in two or more ways. With the way that things have changed during the pandemic, it has become almost second nature for us to authenticate ourselves before being able to do anything for work. And just some cool statistics I actually found was about 58% of Americans are able to work from home at least one day of the week. And an additional 35%, which is huge, say that they're actually working from home the entire week. So it's important that organizations are utilizing multi-factor authentication, given the fact that they most likely have at least one employee that is going to be working remotely every week. So without implementing, multi-factor authentication methods, organizations will run that risk of company data being leaked or used against them for something like ransomware or
Yeah. I mean, and it's, you're right. Multi-factor authentication, we use it a lot. And I'm in a program for school and I have to use it to access
Yep.
my school email and it's
Yep.
everywhere. So
It really is.
Mike, why is it so important that credit unions implement these methods?
Well, Keeley alluded to it earlier. I guess the bad guys, the bad actors, whatever it is you want to call them, are constantly increasing the tools that they use. They learn new tricks the same way we learn new tricks. Um, we need to look at them the same way we look at ourselves. We are professionals. We have to learn how to do our job, and we are expected to learn more every day. They're the same way. They're not just a bunch of punks living in their mom's basement. So the more tricks they have at their availability, the more tricks we have to have at our availability. And using multi-factor authentication, it's like putting two padlocks on a door, not just one. It's just the more layers you can put on, the harder a target it is for them to get to.
Yeah, okay. So then, Mike, how does the multi-factor authentication reduce the risk of, say, identity theft and account compromise?
I mean, it's going to be in the same way it reduces any sort of risk. If you're, let's take the core that you'd have inside a credit union. That core contains a lot of, PII or personally identifiable information. There's a lot of GLBA data that lives inside of there. Any bad actor would be beside themselves to get their hands on it because the amount of information, I mean, think of how many false identities they could make using all that information. So if that's the target thereafter, putting more barriers in between them and that data just plays to the credit union's advantage.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So then, Mike, out of the three factors, so hopefully I got it right. Something you know,
Mhm.
something you have, and something you are. What would be the most secure to use in addition to, say, a password?
All things considered, and caveat, any one of the factors can be broken. But on the whole, if we take that piece aside, something you are, it's a lot harder to replicate that. I mean, it's a retinal pattern, a voice pattern, your face scan, a fingerprint. You are the piece of authentication. So short of somebody having stolen your finger, it's going to be really hard to replicate that one.
Yeah, hopefully that only happens in the movies. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
so Keely, then let's talk about password management because that's just as important as this multi-factor. What makes a good password?
So there are a few things that can help you come up with a good password. And I would say the top two things that make a good password, and I can't rank them first or second because they just go hand in hand. Those two things are length and complexity. I'm going to refer back to NIST, like I did earlier. Their current recommendations say that you should have a minimum of 8 characters and a maximum of 64. But just remember, the longer that the password is, the better. So your passwords obviously shouldn't be something that people can guess, and I hope that is obvious. Because my good friend Mike over here is really big into social engineering.
A bit,
And
yes.
and if you're not familiar with what social engineering is, it is a way that people can attempt to gain information for fraudulent purposes, or in Mike's case, he just likes to do it for fun. Um, but for fraudulent purposes that could potentially be used against you or your company or whoever. Um, so I actually remembered this video that I saw on Jimmy Kimmel once. And he did a video where he sent one of his crew members down in Hollywood. This was back in 2015, so 7 years ago. And they were attempting to find out random people's passwords. And so she was just walking up to random people on the street, asking her what's your password for, something. And this girl responds with, "Oh, it's my password is my dog's name followed by the year that I graduated." And the woman asking her these questions very quickly just was like, "Oh, you have a dog, so cute. What kind of dog is it?" And she says, "Oh, I'm going to make this up, a Boston Terrier or whatever." She's like, "Oh, so cute. What's his name?" And she gives the dog's name. And then she just keeps asking her questions. "Oh, where did you go to high school? What year did you graduate?" So by that point, you have the dog's name and the year that she graduated. So you have her password.
Yeah.
And it literally only took them, I checked the timestamps in the video, it was literally 25 seconds. So that's all it takes to socially engineer someone. But going back to what I was saying, this is another reason why you shouldn't make your password something that is very easily guessable.
Mhm.
To have complexity in your password, you should do things such as switching between upper and lowercase letters throughout the entire password, using special characters, and using numbers. If you have a lengthy, not easy to guess, and very complex password with alternating numbers, symbols, and letters, you should be golden. But the one thing I want to add about making a good password is that you should not use it for every password that you use.
Mm.
Using the same email and password can be detrimental in the case of a breach where, these hackers or bad actors can use the same email and passwords for everything that you've logged into, and suddenly they have information on everything. So,
Yeah. So obviously, based on that, I'm thinking password 123 is not good. So,
Yeah, no.
no.
so Keely, can you give me an example, of a strong password using some of these complex methods that you're talking about?
Yeah, sure. So I've actually come up with two examples of a strong password using the complex methods. And then I also wanted to provide an example of something you should not make your password, even though it might look complex. So the first example of a strong complex password, and I'm just going to spell this out to you. So this one is a minimum of 8 characters, and it is a lowercase d, lowercase l, lowercase e, uppercase r, lowercase t, uppercase n, and then lowercase u and g. So while there are no special characters or numbers in this password, it alternates upper and lowercase, and it's also something that you can't easily guess.
Hmm.
So it's going to be considered a good password. My second example of a strong password, and I can pretty much say this one to you, even though it's still considered a or a good password. Sorry. This password is a little lengthier at 14 characters. It alternates upper and lowercase. And although it may look like it's easy to guess because it comes from a song, special characters are used throughout the entirety, and a bunch of numbers and upper and lowercase. So I'm not going to spell it out to you. I'm just going to give it to you. It's party like 1999. And throughout, it starts with a capital P, then the at sign, and then upper and lower, and characters and numbers. And even though that's a song that many people will know, you would have to go through a lot of different um, alternating and to get to the password. And I actually entered this one into um, I found this website, and you could enter a password and see how long approximately it would take to get hacked. And when I entered this one, I was assuming that it would come up with something like, I don't know, a year or something maybe. It said 4 billion years, which kind of blew my mind. Um, so then I'll give you my final example, which is a bad password, and it looks complex, but it still shouldn't be used. You've probably seen this example before, but I think it's a great example of what not to do. So the password is capital P, at sign, money sign, W, the number 0, RD, which spells password. Even though it looks complex, when I entered it into this same website, it said 8 hours, I believe. And, it looks good, but it's something that can be easily guessed. So it's
Mhm.
not going to be considered a good password. And, even though special characters were used, it's just going to be easily guessable and hackable.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, someone always told me to use, I think it might have been Mike, use passphrases. Mike, does that sound like something you would have told me? Okay, so
Yep.
passphrases.
Yeah.
Strings of
Um,
words.
Yeah.
but then that brings me to my next question, Mike, since you like to use passphrases. Okay, I
Mhm.
have so many accounts these days. How are we to keep all these complex passwords unique and actually remember them too?
Funny you ask that. Starting next week in my merch store is my exclusive new keyboard that has a spot on the back where you can write all your no,
Yeah.
no, no. It, you take your pick which one you want to use. There are a number of different password managers out there that you can get. All of them, the job is the exact same thing. Make it easier for you to use complex passwords by having the system generate it, and then the system remembers it for you. There's ones that'll run in your web browser. There ones that run in the cloud. There are ones that'll run on your computer. You pick the one you like. You pick the one that's easiest for you to work with, but let it do all the heavy lifting for you. I mean, I'm lucky if I can remember 2 or 3 passwords a day. There's no way I'm going to remember all 25 different systems that I have to. It's just not practical. But yeah, find a password manager, find one that you like, and yeah, use it to its full advantage.
All right. Well, thank you both so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to kind of talk with me
Absolutely.
about strong passwords, MFA. Keely, any final thoughts for our listeners today?
Oh gosh, put me on the spot here, Jamie. Final thoughts: don't use those easy to guess passwords. Change them up. Use your password managers, because I need to start practicing this as well. And I think it's definitely something that everyone needs to practice, because you do not want that, you don't want that one day to come along and it's your unlucky day and someone gets
Yep.
your passwords, and by the end of the day, you got no
Game
money.
over.
Game
Yeah.
over. Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
pretty much.
All right. Mike, what about you? Any final thoughts for our listeners today?
Um, at one point, multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication was the exception. It's becoming more of the norm. If you guys have access to it through any one of your vendors, absolutely use it. I mean, if you're paying for the service and it's part of the service, you're already paying. Use it. It's there for a reason. Take advantage of it.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you again. And thank you to Vizo Financial's Payments Conference for sponsoring the security series of Financial Minds Meet the Experts. Vizo Financial's virtual payments conference will be October 18th and 19th. Registration is open, and details about the event and the education sessions are available on Vizo Financial's website at www.vfccu.org. As always, thank you so much for listening and have a great day.
Bye, everyone.
See ya.